Hello there, my name is Max, and today I want to talk a little bit about learning a language. But before I get to the actual topic of this video, I just want to answer 3 questions you might have. And these are why I'm actually making this video. And well, first of all, because I had to learn a second language in school, and I do not want to lose it, because as we all know, it's use it or lose it with skills. If you don't use a skill, you lose it after some time. So I need the reason to speak English, and this is to make this video. Then I also want to improve my skill of being comfortable talking to a camera. I'm here alone, more or less, talking to this camera. And well, I also want to inform or talk a little bit about a topic that I think is getting more and more important, and that has not existed in the history of humanity up until now. And I'm gonna get to this, but let's start with what I actually want to talk about, and this is learning a language. You can probably hear from my accent and from the way I talk and my grammar and all of this that I'm not an English native speaker. I had to learn English in school, as every Austrian, and well, now I'm 21 years old, and you see what the result is, and you can hear it more or less. And well, something I want to talk about is how I actually learned English. Well, it goes back to primary school. In primary school, so just a short overview of the Austrian school system. You have preschool, which you can take. It's not mandatory. You can do 1 year preschool. I did that. My parents signed me up for this. Then there's 4 years of primary school. Then there's 4 years of secondary school. And then you can either do an apprenticeship, or you can attend a higher school, higher education. In my case, it was 5 years of college, technical college to be more exact. And well, when did I start learning English? Well, I started learning English when I was in 4th grade of primary school, because there was a program for school kids to learn English. It wasn't compulsory, it wasn't mandated, or it wasn't actually provided by the school itself. It was just some random guy, some native speaker from, I think, Manchester it was. When I remember, he had quite a thick accent, so you can guess he was quite British, yeah. And well, I think it was something that the parents could pay a little bit of money for, and then well, we got the chance to speak to him, or he was there after school for like 2 hours on every Friday, and it was quite interesting. And to be honest, I didn't learn anything at all. I wasn't really interested in English. I wasn't really into learning another language entirely. I didn't care at all. I had this lake, I had free time, and I wanted to spend it at this lake and with friends and everything. And well, speaking English every Friday for 2 hours, well, he spoke, we listened, he wanted us to say things, I did say things, I just memorized them. I like completely lost what he said, or what the meaning was of everything he told us, like 3 days later, at least. And those hours were quite interesting. He told us about tea, how to make tea the right way, you know, Yorkshire tea, Yorkshire Gold, and all of this. He talked about train schedules, and like Her Royal Highness, the Majesty, back then the Queen was still alive. I think this was in 2015, so 7 years before she died. And well, he made it quite interesting. I couldn't say that it was boring, but it was not something that interested me. It was learning a language, and I wasn't really, as I said, into learning languages. In the last 2 hours that we had before the summer break, he actually brought an electric stove to the class and a pan, and then we made pancakes, you know, with this chocolate syrup and maple syrup and all of this. It was quite interesting, but well, English came and went with me, so it didn't really stick with me. Then I got into the 1st grade of secondary school. And well, there English is mandatory. You have at least 3 hours of English every week. So in Austria, a school week is always the same. There's a curriculum, a plan, and well, it's followed through. It's not like in England, I think, where you have fortnights, so 2-week schedules. In Austria, it's every week. And what I can tell you is we had 3 hours of English every week, so an hour or lesson is, I think, 50 minutes. So 150 minutes of English every week. And well, it was a lot of English, because our teachers, well, they were highly motivated, I can tell you that. They were so highly motivated that I think at the start of every week or every Friday we got a list of, I think, 30 words we had to learn, so vocabulary, German and English translation, also with if a word was written differently in American than English, than normal British English, it was written there twice, I think, or just with a slash, and we had to learn all this. So we would get the list of words on Friday, and the next Friday they would test us. And you can imagine with 37 school weeks each year for 2 years, with about 30 or 40 words each week, I had to learn, and we all had to learn a lot of vocabulary. And well, it wasn't just vocabulary that we needed to learn, because in between we would also sometimes do grammar tests. You know, all of the tenses, how verbs and how to conjugate things and all of this. And I can tell you, I have a lot of flies here, and I can tell you, it was quite boring. I hated it. It was like, for me, I didn't really like German. So in Austrian schools you learn, of course, German. German is the language we speak here. German in itself is quite a hard language, also for normal people who speak German every day. German native speaker like me, it's hard to learn German because of all the spelling, all of the grammar. It's so much. It's not just the der, die, das, but it's so much more you have to learn in German, because there are like 3 different ways to write the same thing, and they all have a different meaning. And well, I can tell you, I was bored in English. I didn't like it the 3 hours a week. I sat there, I just listened to it, but my teachers, as I said, they were highly motivated, and they weren't just teaching English, just telling us the things and us having to memorize them for vocabulary. No, they, of course, highly enthusiastic. They ask us a lot. So what they would do is the teacher would stay in front and give us a question, and then like she would choose after a few seconds a random student that had then to answer this question. So you were never sure who would be picked, so everybody had to come up with their own answer. And well, I can tell you, back in the day, I learned English like it was a math problem. I learned the vocabulary, I learned the grammar, I learned everything that was in the books. All of this, you know, you start with the most basic words like long, short, tall, thick, white, blue, yellow, and green. All of this, like car, street, road, lamp, all of these simple words. And then, well, she would give us questions. Well, what color is the lamp, and how long is the floor, and all of these strange questions, and you would have to answer them. And like, I treated it as if it was a math problem. Like, you sit there, you really focus on listening to it. You have the English question, then you need to translate it in your head into German. You need to find an answer to that. You need to translate this answer in vocabulary to English again, apply English grammar, rearrange all of the words, then also care about pronunciation, because English pronunciation is like the only thing hard about English, if you might say it like that, because, well, it's quite inconsistent. And then you would have to memorize it until she might choose you, and well, you can just hope that you don't forget it because all of the stress you have. And like, I hated English. But after 2 years or so, well, I started watching YouTube. And well, I was quite interested in tech, in PCs, in gaming. I didn't actually do gaming myself, strangely, but I was interested in PC components, you know, graphics card, processors, random access memories of RAM and all of this stuff, and the internet protocols, you know. And I watched YouTube quite a lot back in 2016, late 2016, early 2017. And well, I watched it, of course, in German. I hated English. I watched it in German. But you need to know, back in the day, like in 2016, 2017, YouTube and the entire internet was quite different from what it is now. Because back in the day, there weren't that many videos. Yeah, YouTube had a limited amount of videos back in the day. And well, endless scrolling wasn't invented yet. Like, I would type in a topic, I wanted to watch something about a GTX 980, and like there were just 5 or 6 videos in German. I watched 2 of them, the other ones didn't interest me that much, and well, I watched all of the videos there were. All of the videos that I thought were interesting. There was no endless scrolling, there was no doom scrolling. You hit a hard button, the page had an end, and well, yeah, you watched all of the videos. And well, after some time, back in the day, translation on YouTube was still quite strange. Some videos that were in other languages were for some reason, the titles were translated sometimes into German. So I would click one of the videos thinking it was a German language video, but in fact it was a completely different language. It was maybe Spanish, maybe Italian, maybe Portuguese, Ukrainian, Russian sometimes. Yeah, if there wasn't like the language, if there weren't characters or words in the thumbnail, well, you would never know. The title is in German, and well, you sit there, you click it, and just when the video started, then you would see the real title, and then you would know, oh, well, I can't understand this. So I watched videos about technology and all of this stuff, and after some time, I don't know which video it was or when exactly it was, but at some point I clicked a Linus Tech Tips video. I know it was a Linus Tech Tips video. I clicked it, and it was, I think, something about processors, and the title was translated into German, and it also contained no text. So I clicked it, thinking it was a German video. I've never seen this guy before. I clicked it, and well, to my surprise, it was again in English, a language I not only didn't know, but that I hated. But he started with some sentence, and I thought to myself, well, I understand part of this. I can understand enough to make sense of what he's saying. And well, I see what he's holding, and I see who he's talking to, and I see all of the things on screen that he does. And I thought to myself, well, I might continue watching this. And so I watched the video, and after finishing it, well, I couldn't say that I understand everything. Far from it. Yeah, I lost like 70% of what he said, but I understood it. I understood some part of it. Yeah, and it was enough. It made sense. I didn't know the specific words or exactly what they were talking about, but I understood this video. And you know, after that, I was mesmerized. I watched another video. I clicked another video. Like, you know, you click on the YouTube channel, and there's a whole load of videos, because you know, Linus Tech Tips started a lot earlier than late 2016, early 2017. There were already a metric ton of different videos about pretty much everything, and like I clicked through 1, 2, 3, 8, 20 of these videos, and like I understood them. The more I watched, the more they made sense, because I also learned about what things were called in English that you didn't learn in school. I knew the process, so the German word Prozessor is processor in English, and like RAM is also written RAM in German, even though it's not a German abbreviation, it's just taken from English. And you know, I watched them, and I thought to myself, hey, what am I doing here? I'm watching videos that aren't in my language. I'm a German native speaker, I'm from Austria, and I'm watching a video taken or recorded by somebody speaking in English in Canada. I thought to myself, I'm from Austria, and I'm watching a video from Canada that is not intended for Austrians. They are speaking English. This is intended for Canada. This is intended for the US, Great Britain, for Australia and New Zealand. I felt like I was Mr. Worldwide. Yeah, I was there understanding another language. I wasn't understanding all of it, but I understood enough to make sense of it. And so I continued watching these videos every day after school, or not every day, but many days after school. I went home, I sat down in front of my laptop, 4 megabits of internet connectivity, Wi-Fi through 15 walls, I think. But I could watch YouTube in 480p, and I could listen to this, and the stuff was interesting, because after I've started like listening to more and more of it, well, I understood even more of it. And after some time, I didn't just only watch Linus Tech Tips, but also Veritasium. I watched Practical Engineering. I watched like Electroboom, and a lot of different channels, all of which, or most of them, were like in North America, and also the Slow-Mo guys from Great Britain that then moved to North America. And like, I was so happy, and like I continued more and more watching more and more videos in English. And after some time, I also noticed that this changed my way of thinking about English, and also what I was doing in class, because I wasn't sitting there anymore. I'm being highly concentrated on understanding what our teacher said in English, and then having to translate it to German. The more I listened to English YouTube videos and English stuff in general, after some time I noticed that in class I didn't have to think that much about understanding it anymore. I understood it, and I got the concept of what the meaning of the sentence was. It got a lot easier for me. And then after a few more months, so this went on for like 6 or 8 months, after 8 months or so, I sat there in class, and for the first time I don't know what the exact sentence it was, but I started noticing that I didn't really like I said there. I understood the sentence, what the question was, and she of course wanted an answer from somebody, so I had to think of an answer. But like, of course, I was thinking normally like having the meaning of the sentence and coming up with a German answer that I would then like always try to translate to English. But I noticed that I had a feeling of what the right answer would be in English. It wasn't a concrete thought, it wasn't a finished sentence, but there was a feeling of like what it needed to sound like, or like what the right order of words was, what the grammar was, the correct grammar. You know, I couldn't really put my finger on it. I couldn't really tell what it is, and well, to be honest, it made me quite nervous and uncomfortable for some time because I didn't know what was going on with me. Because like every time I heard an English question, I did not only come up with a answer like the conventional way like I always used to, but I also had like this feeling of what the answer should be in English. And like I didn't tell anyone. I just felt strange. I didn't know if this was like good or not, because like our teacher never told us that we should listen to English speaking content or something like this. This was something I came up with, I was doing, and I thought, well, maybe this is bad. Maybe I'm learning something the wrong way. Maybe I'm doing something that I shouldn't do. Like nobody else, as far as I knew, did this. And so sometime I started to reduce the amount of content I watched and listened to in English. And well, the feeling didn't really go away. Yeah, it was still there. Even though I stopped watching English content like completely sometime after that, like this feeling was there still. And well, it continued, and I, like after some time, it got more concrete to the point that it was really a formed sentence, and this made me quite nervous because I listened to something and I came up with an answer without really thinking about it, and well, I didn't calculate it. I didn't have a real German sentence in my head that I then, vocabulary, word for word translated to English, then applied grammar, switched the word order, and then like the pronunciation on it. No, I just had a question and I came up with an answer. And the answer, well, it felt right. I had the feeling that it felt right, but it wasn't really, like I couldn't prove it. I had a suspicion, but I couldn't prove it really. And well, then I thought to myself, should I say it out loud? Like I forced myself to do it the old way, like the way I used to do it, but it felt even more cumbersome than it did before. And well, I noticed, because I of course had this feeling, what the right answer should be. And after some time, this feeling became more and more correct, because of course somebody in class would then be picked and answer this question, and our teacher would tell us what like the right question or the right answer would have been. And I noticed that I was becoming more and more right with my feeling or my prediction what should have been the answer. And well, after some time, like I didn't tell this to my parents, I didn't tell this to other students, because I, as I said, thought that I might be doing something wrong. I might be like undoing the right way of learning English my teacher and the entire school system had laid out. And well, for some time, I just sat there with this feeling, and then I noticed that some of the other students were doing jokes about dropping things and doing it the Linus way. And then, well, after some days, I asked them if they knew Linus Tech Tips, and they all said, or some of them at least said, yeah, they watch Linus Tech Tips. I asked them if they really watched it in English, and they said, yeah, they started with watching it in English some time ago. And like this broke some kind of barrier for me, because, well, I wasn't the only person doing this thing, watching English content. Like, I didn't know why, but for me it felt wrong. I, as a normal German native speaker from Austria, watch YouTube content from another continent intended for an entirely different audience. And well, after knowing that other students of my class also watched English-speaking content and also gained something from that, I then decided that, well, I would be more bold, and also like, even though it wasn't always right, because I couldn't prove that it was right, if I calculate the sentence from German to English, or do a hard translation in my head from German to English, well, I know the sentence should be correct from as far as I know. But if I just follow my feeling of what the sentence should be, well, I do not have a real proof. I just have the feeling that it's right. And even though this feeling became stronger and stronger that I was right and I was getting more right, I wasn't really there yet. I wasn't really like planning on saying it out loud. But then I decided I wanted to be more bold and say it out loud. But well, then came COVID. Half a year of lockdown. We were all at home. Speaking English wasn't really a thing anymore. We only got sheets with English exercises via email, and well, it was just reading and writing comprehension, or reading comprehension and writing proficiency. And well, this was like the entire story I had in secondary school. But then I went to college, higher technical college to be exact, for 5 years. Okay, the first time, I think the first maybe half a year was also homeschooling, but then we started to get back to class. COVID was more or less over, or we were past the, I think, third wave or something. We also had to did like all of these PCR tests and antigen tests, and all of these tests that we had to do in school. You probably remember them. And well, our new teacher, like this was something completely new, because I went to primary and secondary school in a small town in Austria. I knew everybody there. I was in the same class with the same people for like 8 years straight. I knew them from kindergarten, and we grew up together until we were like 14, 15 years old. Why do I keep saying old? Old? Yeah. That's a problem with learning English when you're a German native speaker, because the two languages are so close together sometimes that you like do not choose the wrong word, but you choose the in-between word. It's not alt, but it's not old. It's old. Yeah, sounding quite strange. It sounds wrong enough that I notice it and it interrupts me. I felt like I was doing something wrong, or I was too good, or all of this, because like all the people in my class, they were still having a hard time, some of them, and I was here, and also the teachers noticed that I became better and better in English. But then when I started attending the higher technical college, well, we all were mixed together from a whole district here in Austria. The district here is about 144,000 people, so I didn't know most of the people I went to class with in the higher technical college. And well, considering that, there was no common baseline. Some were better in English, some were worse in English, and so I thought to myself, well, I can't do anything wrong. If I'm too good or I'm too bad with my prediction and my feeling, well, I can just say that, well, that's normal, because like I wasn't that good before and there was no way to prove it. Yeah, really. And I really had luck with my teacher. My teacher, I had her for 5 years in higher technical college, and she was great. I have to say she was great, and she had a saying: you learn a language not by talking about the language, but by talking in that language. And that was what we did. So every other lesson, she wouldn't come in saying, well, take out your exercise book, page 34, exercise 2, do that and tell me when you're finished. No, she would come in, say, well, get rid of these stupid books, close them. Today we're gonna talk about X, Y, Z. And well, she came in, and she had to talk with us about the normal topics in the book, world of work, doing an internship abroad, culture of South Asia, all of these things, tea ceremonies in Britain. But one thing she also liked to do, and that I didn't know many other teachers did, was talking about everyday topics, everyday problems and politics. And you know what? Like, I was at this point confident enough with the feeling, so I of course stopped thinking about English, like translating from German to English. I stopped that like right away after a few weeks in the first class of the higher technical college. But I was there, and you still have the barrier. You still have you're still worrying about, well, is what I'm saying, is that right? Do I make grammar errors? Do I make vocabulary errors? Which type of errors do I make? And well, do they make me sound stupid? That's a real concern for people learning a language. I don't know if you learned the language, but well, for somebody learning a language, it's quite stressful, because you of course want to get it perfect, yeah. And well, if it's a boring topic like world of work, more or less, yeah, doing an internship abroad, what can you say? Did you do an internship abroad? No, I did not. Yeah, like you always have this barrier and the topic is not so interesting, like you do not want to talk. Yeah, you have to talk because the teacher asks you to talk, but you don't really want to talk. And of course you have a lot of time to formulate your answer and all of this, but at the end of the day you really have like this entire barrier to actually speaking up and telling the others and the teacher first and foremost what you think. So our teacher was quite great for that because she gave us everyday topics, things you could have a real opinion of and could be passionate about, like gaming. What do you think of gaming? What do you think about public transportation in the state of more or less of like the region? What do you think about social media addiction and all of these things? Yeah, like the full range, everything you could think about, like government crisis, budget cuts, and like everything. Yeah, and when you're talking about these topics that you can have an opinion on, yeah, it changes everything because you're not forced to find an answer. You sit there, and she also didn't, like, she flipped it on her head. She wasn't like the teacher I had in secondary school that would say, well, I give you a question, everybody should come up with more or less the same answer to something that is true because, well, the lamp is only blue. It's not changing color depending on which person is being asked. So, like, you have one teacher, 22 students, and everybody should come up with more or less the same answer. No, she gave us a topic. It wasn't really a question. Okay, it was a question in the beginning, but then it was a heated argument, and we weren't talking to the teacher, we were talking to each other. Like our teacher in higher technical college, she just started the argument, then we had to argue with each other, and well, this changes everything because you are not answering boring questions to the teacher anymore that grades you. No, somebody said something that you think is wrong, or you want to add something to that, or you want to say that you also approve this. Well, you stand there and you want to say something, you want to speak up, it's your opinion that you want to say, and well, you do not really care that much about if it's right. You want to get that point across, and that is what changes everything, because when you just want to get the point across, well, you do some strange vocabulary, you do some strange grammar, but it's like the same thing you would do like when you're on vacation. When you go to some country for vacation and you learn the local language a bit, you aren't really concerned about grammar or like if your vocabulary or your pronunciation is completely right. Yeah, no, you just want to get the point across. You just want to ask where the toilet is. You just want to ask how much the pasta costs. You just want to order a beer. Yeah, una cerveza por favor, and all of these things. And you do not really care about all of these things like grades. Yeah, you're sitting in school and you're being graded. You're talking to the teacher and the teacher grades you. Every single word, every breath, every like pronunciation mistake you do is being graded. Well, my teacher in the higher technical college, she just sat there in the front, she started the argument, we were arguing with each other, and she was just listening to what we were saying to each other. She just sat there quietly listening to everybody. At some point, the debate got so heated, so we couldn't really yell at each other, if you know what I mean. Like, it was not a free debate. It was somebody said something, then the teacher, if we made some large mistake that was like substantially wrong, she would say, well, it's not on, it's in, or like the pronunciation was off. She would say, well, we had to stress more or less this character than the other one. But you know, it's something completely different. And she wouldn't really say, well, that was wrong. She would just say, well, you need to improve this. And of course, so that it didn't get out of hand, like only a person could answer that held up his arm, and she would choose the next person, mostly who had the arm in the air for longer. And like, it was great. It was great for learning not only to read and listen to a language, but also to learn how to speak it. And like, this was in the first year, second year, third year. And then of course we also started to do presentations, like not only talking like in the moment to somebody else about a topic or a debate that just has come up like 2 minutes ago. It's also standing somewhere alone in front of people and talking about some random topic. We had to talk about, like, I had a presentation to do about dark tourism. I had to do a presentation about my favorite company. I had to do a presentation about, like, all different kinds of things, like doing an internship abroad and all of these things, or Japanese, I think, business culture and this stuff. And like, you learn to speak a lot more. Like today, I can't really talk for everybody, but today I can certainly better talk in English than I can write in English. I can write in English, no problem, but like, I know the words, I know what they sound like, but I then have to ask myself, well, how are they actually spelled out? Yeah, that's my problem. I get the spelling wrong sometimes. But from like finding the word, I do not have that large of a problem with that anymore. And well, who I am contributing my English skills to? Is it YouTube? Is it school? Is it like which teacher? Well, I can tell you, it's everything of the above. Like, without the hard vocabulary and the hard grammar I had to learn in the first 2 classes of secondary school, I wouldn't have understood a single word of that English-speaking YouTube video. So learning 2 years grammar and vocabulary the boring way, just memorizing it every week, 30 vocabularies, 30 words to memorize. It was boring, and I hated it. But without that, I wouldn't have had the skills to actually even understand or make sense of even just a small part of a YouTube video. Then, of course, started YouTube, and well, this improved my English listening comprehension, I think, and it also expanded my pool of words that I can use vastly. And well, all of this also isn't really important or really helpful if you do not learn to speak a language. Like, English isn't Latin, yeah? Nobody speaks Latin because nobody uses that language anymore. It's dead. You can't really speak Latin. You just learn to read it, understand it after reading it, so text comprehension, and then you write it. You can't really talk to somebody in Latin. That's something completely different. You can't really learn English that way because, well, English isn't a dead language. It's being spoken by, 500 million people as native speakers, and a lot more who learned it secondary. So, for example, here in the European Union, I'm here in the European Union, about, I think, so the European Union has 440 million citizens, and about 51% of them said that they can hold a conversation in English if they had to. So we are about 220 million people in the European Union that can speak English to varying degrees. Scandinavian and Northern European countries are generally better. Austria is also very good, being the third best ranked country speaking English that isn't a native English speaking country. But in the south, like for example Italy, Spain, Portugal, Romania, these countries have a little bit of a lower proficiency, but that's also not that bad. Like all of these things. And well, I wouldn't have learned English this well, I think, if any of these 3 factors were missing. If I didn't have to learn the boring hard vocabulary and the grammar at first, I wouldn't have understood the YouTube videos. Without listening to the YouTube videos, I wouldn't have had like this good understanding of the English language. And well, without this teacher that made us actually talk and motivated us to talk and had to made us come up with sentences and real answers and like normal everyday conversations, because you do not really write or you do not really speak English the way that you write it, because when writing English, like in a test, you won't say this ain't gonna work, because ain't officially isn't really a word you can use in English, or at least in the Austrian school system when you're writing English. So, but nobody really is doing this. If you're not like some presenter on TV news, you aren't really talking like this. You're saying this ain't gonna work. These things, slang and all of this is quite important to sound natural. And well, with all of this, there's one thing I want to add to the end of this. And this is that I'm quite concerned about the future of learning a language. And this is because the reason why learning a language is getting less important every day. Because now with all of these improvements, we all know AI and all of this stuff, it's getting better. And it's getting to this point that YouTube or other platforms are now offering live AI translation. So you can watch any video and AI live translates the voice of whoever is speaking into another language. It does some algorithms to figure out how the person who speaks in a video would sound in another language. So it matches this like the coloration and like the emphasis. It tries to get this right, but it's really not that good. And but my motivation to learn English better and improve my English was because I wanted to understand more of the videos that were on YouTube. I watched the videos not only because they were interesting, but also because I wanted to improve my English skills. And well, if I can watch any video, any content in the world, may it be in French, in Spanish, in Italian, Romanian, Swedish, or English, just by AI translating it, I don't put any thought into it anymore. Because like watching a video that isn't your native language, that isn't your first language, it doesn't matter which language it is. If you are Spanish and you are learning Russian, or if you are like Italian and you're learning Finnish, it doesn't matter which pair of languages you are talking about, but just listening to content in another language is like the hardest brain exercise you can do in language learning, because well, you want to understand what they are talking about. So this is the normal workload you would also have when listening to your first language stuff, but you also have to translate it in your head to get double the duty on your head and on your brain, and well, it keeps you sharp, I can tell you that. And like all of this is going away with AI translations, and they are not only stripping away this additional task of translating the language in your head. No, it's also reducing the first task of understanding what they are actually talking about in that video, in that audio recording, may it be on YouTube, from TV, on radio. It doesn't matter. It's just that you do lose the skill of translating the language, and the content that AI spits out, so the translation is also inferior in every way, because it's not complex, it doesn't really have emphasis, it's just, even though it tries to replicate it, it's flat and boring, if you know what I mean. And all of this leads to like a degrade in human capability, because I don't know how my English skills or my second language skills would have developed if I just sat there and watched AI translations of other language media into German, because well, the German it spits out, I tried it, the AI translation is worse in every possible way. It's more boring, it uses simpler grammar, it uses shorter sentences, all of the above. And like these problems, I know people like that I've worked with for the last 9 months. One of them used to use ChatGPT so much, like ChatGPT was like his girlfriend, yeah. So I know somebody who has ChatGPT or a large language AI system as a girlfriend, more or less. Like he used ChatGPT so much, and he asked it so much, and he read so much of ChatGPT that he started sounding like ChatGPT himself. Like, you probably know this feeling if you read a text on some website and you notice, well, that wasn't really written by a human. The way it's structured, the way the sentences are, like all of these longer dashes in the sentence, like this train of thought dashes, and also those words that normal people do not really use in a conversation, like to delve into a topic. Yeah, I can't remember ever having heard the word delve before AI. Like AI came up with it. I know it was there previously, but it was used so little that I didn't really know it existed before. But now it's everywhere, and I noticed that there are people who are always that are also using it, and people who really talk like ChatGPT. And I have to say, it's getting quite worrying right now, because not only do we humans get worse at different language skills, but also our cognitive abilities are degenerated by AI. So AI is generating, and we are not improving. We are doing quite the opposite. Yeah, and all of this is a problem I wouldn't have thought we are gonna have. Like 4 years ago, this wasn't really on anybody's list that this would happen at some point. But here we are, 4 years later, people are talking like machines. Yeah, and I think because of that, like I don't know if I should end up this video like on some call to action, but please, if you want to learn a language, don't use AI translation. Don't use AI as much as possible. We humans can do things because we humans need to learn something. Without hardship, there is no gain. Yeah, I know this sounds like I'm a boomer, but in German there is a saying: "Von nichts kommt nichts." So without pain, there is no gain. And also the other thing I wanted to say: use it or lose it. That's the reason why I said I'm making this video. I want to get comfortable talking to a camera. I want to get comfortable speaking in English more. I do not want to lose my English skills because, well, when should I instead talk English to somebody? I could talk to myself in the mirror, but that gets strange. And, well, I hope that you liked this video, that you've thought it was interesting. And, well, leave your opinion on what I said below in the comments. Maybe like and subscribe. I think it's strange to say it. I heard it like 500 million times from all different YouTube creators. Saying it myself now is quite interesting to do. But yeah, I think the like button is down here something, or well, in the lower right third of the screen. So thank you for watching this, and bye.
But I've touched down everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.